Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our cow eye dissection. So this is a cow eye, all right? So there are a few features that you need to be able to identify from the outside, okay? So first one, since it is pointing up like this, we can see that we have this, what's supposed to be clear structure on top. This is the cornea, okay? So the cornea is a clear connective tissue structure that goes over the top of the eye, okay? Then below that and around that, you have the sclera. The sclera is the white part of your eye that you see in your eye right now. Well, if you happen to be looking at your eye right now, I suppose. So this is your sclera and this is your cornea. Now, the next thing that we need to see, we are going to turn the eyeball over. And we have lots of connective tissue in here. This here is a muscle. But when we look through, there's one structure that's a little different. You guys see this here. That is cranial nerve 2, otherwise known as your optic nerve, and this is the nerve that takes vision information from your eye and brings it back to your brain, okay? Okay, the only other structure that you're supposed to know on the external surface is the conjunctiva. So the conjunctiva is the pink part of your eye, and honestly, it's not very visible in here. We can see that there's this flap here, and you can see that this flap here has some color to it. So that is probably what is left of the conjunctiva. So those are all the structures that you need to know on the external portion of the eye. All right, so now we are going to do our actual dissection portion. So you take your scalpel, and your scalpel is going to go into the junction between the cornea and the sclera, just inside the scleral portion. And so very carefully put the blade in, and it'll slide in, okay? Now, you shouldn't be stabbing as hard as you can, because if you do that, well, it's going to spray juice at you and you're going to be very, very sad. But you'll notice the blade end is pointed away from my fingers, okay? And so once it's in there, I'm just going to lightly saw, and I'm going to be moving across, and then I will shift it so that the blade end never comes anywhere near my fingers. And we just keep sawing all the way across. And blade end is not coming near my fingers. Now at a certain point, you're going to have a hard time continuing. So what you do is you take tweezers and you use the tweezers to anchor the side here. And you're going to go ahead and extend the cut a little bit more if you can. And actually I'm losing too much jelly, so I'm going to instead use scissors, okay? So I'm going to do this last portion with scissors so we don't lose all of our jelly, because I want you guys to see the jelly. Okay, so what you can do now is you can pull it up, and when you pull it up, you're going to be able to see the inside. All right, so once you're inside, there's a few interesting features to see. So we're going to go ahead and first of all, notice this little hard marble here. I'm going to scoot it forward just a little bit. This little hard marble here is your lens, okay? And your lens is kind of the in-between point from your anterior chamber and your posterior chamber. So anterior to the lens is aqueous humor. Aqueous humor is more of a water-like fluid, but behind the lens is your vitreous humor, which is more of this sort of jelly-like stuff. And you can kind of see this isn't water, it's like sticking up here. This is like a jelly, okay? And so this is part of your vitreous humor that fills the posterior chamber of the eye, okay? You can also see here that this is the colored portion of the eye. And this colored portion of the eye, it's difficult to see in this video, and I'm not sure that you guys can see the subtlety, but you're going to be dissecting your own eyes and you'll see it then. Well, not your own eye, please, but your own cow eye. But if you look very carefully, there's little lines that are coming across here, and those little lines are part of the ciliary body, okay? Now, the actual colored portion, you can see through the cornea typically with an eye that isn't as cloudy as this one was, but that is your iris, okay? So on the opposite side of this ciliary body is the iris, or the colored part of the eye, okay? Now, under all this vitreous humor, we have a black membrane. That black membrane is part of your choroid layer. The choroid layer, of course, has all the blood vessels, which makes it look black. We also have a colored portion of the eye, and we'll look at that in a little more detail in just a few moments. And when you look at that colored portion, that shows you the retina, and the retina has all of the actual receptors that pick up light, okay? So, I think that's all the structures we need to find on the internal. We had the iris on the opposite side of this ciliary body. We had the pupil. I didn't mention the pupil. So the pupil is on the other side here, and actually we'll look at that in just a second. The choroid layer was the black layer down here. The retina had the colored portion. This is the posterior cavity with the vitreous humor. And this is the lens. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and pop out our lens here. And you can see that there is an open hole. And this open hole is the pupil. Okay, so this is the pupil. So light would come through this opening, go into the lens, and then it would be focused onto the retina. So let's go ahead. I'm going to cut this flap. It's floppy, but it's not a flop, it's the flap. I'm going to cut it the rest of the way off. And when I do that, I'm going to go ahead and see if we can get some more of this vitreous humor out of here. All right, guys, so moving the retina out of the way here, you can see a little bit better this black area, which is, of course, our choroid layer that we mentioned before, because this has all of the blood vessels. We also notice all of this colored parts in here. That is not in our eye. That is unique to cow eyes because they see differently than we do. We also notice that the retina is all coming to a point here. So I've kind of pulled it out, except for it's still attached at one particular point. So that one particular point is going to be the optic disc. The optic disc is the place where everything comes together and is going to lead to our optic nerve, okay? And so this is what we call our blind spot because of the optic nerve being right there, okay? And that, ladies and gentlemen, finishes up our eye dissection.